Good evening, everyone. We asked a question today to hundreds of students, many of which were not able to actually go to classes today. Is one actually allowed to go on strike? Are you allowed to, as an employee, to strike? What does Jewish law have to say about striking? There's no question that the halacha recognizes the idea of striking, meaning that people can get together and create their own guilds and create their own rules. In fact, the Gemara even says in Bava Metzia that if people come together and form their own rules, it needs to be respected. It needs to be properly treated. And Rav Moshe Feinstein says that people are allowed to go on strike. It has to be recognized, and it has to proper dina d'mochus dina. The law of the land is the law. People can come together to create their own rules, and if it's accepted, then it is in fact binding. And so, Rav Moshe Feinstein, the Choshen Mishpat, even says that labor unions are allowed to organize such strikes. However, there are those who request the rabbinic courts in order to allow them to go on strikes. Shall we say, needs permission of the rabbi, but perhaps in the secular world, in a secular country, that would not obviously be needed. What about teachers and doctors going on strike? Because it is a mitzvah for them to heal, a mitzvah for them to teach, it would be forbidden for them to go on strike. And what about in the modern era, universities? So one could argue that receiving a parnasa, and a job and a wage, is actually obligatory, and therefore, if you're preventing me from getting a job, if you're preventing me from learning and studying, and perhaps instead I'm going to do other things which aren't good and constructive, perhaps one could argue that by you going on strike, TAs and professors, it might actually hinder my earnings. And we know that working and having a job is definitely a mitzvah, is something which is obligatory. What exactly is the case in our situation? Well, who knows? Not quite sure. It is a little bit unclear, but definitely there's no question that Halacha does recognize the ability for one to go on strike as long as it is not an essential service, like was stated before, like someone who teaches Torah or a doctor or someone in the medical field. What about an individual who wants to quit? That is a lot different. We know that in fact an individual can quit. An individual can quit in the middle of the day. Obviously, if it causes a loss to the owner, then in fact he might need to compensate the boss for having quit in the middle of the day if the boss is left high and dry and maybe needs to hire someone else at a higher wage or has some type of loss that incurs because of someone who quits. Once again, there's no question that halacha recognizes the unions. Halacha recognizes validity of people to come together to have a set type of conditions as per the Gemara, and is codified, in fact, the halacha and codified in Jewish law. Take a look for a couple of sources, specifically Baba Basra 8b. Take a look at the Choshen Mishpat as well, who seems to codify that we respect people and their decisions. Have a wonderful evening, everyone, and that is the answer for the Tuesday texting Torah challenge, which, who knows, maybe is under a labor dispute, and we look forward to getting back to school, to studying properly in the very near future. Until then, JLIC strikes back.